Hey, it's Marbler here. What I'm going to be showing you today is a method for collecting through the jet stream in Jolly Roger Bay in 0 presses. The current running method for collecting the star is to just line Mario up with this texture on the ground very, very carefully, but as you'll see, it is quite difficult to actually get lined up with the center of the texture, and Mario just gets pushed out very, very quickly. As it turns out, it's roughly a half of a unit radius that you need to be within, so we're going to be looking at ways to actually collect it. Now, if you don't know how to get up here, it does require a pause buffer dive recover from this rock. It's not too terribly difficult. It doesn't actually have to be one frame apart, but it is a little bit tricky to do, so definitely you'll need to practice that first. What we're going to start out with is, this is a fairly tight space to get from here to the star in the cap timer, even when you're allowed to press the A button, so having some kind of setup is going to be very tricky, so we have to do it quickly. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to actually crawl off of the metal cap box, and it's important that we're facing towards the cave mouth here. So when we crawl off the box, you see the camera points down. This means we're going into free fall. This part isn't too terribly precise, but just anywhere within this window we can ground pound. And what this does is this doesn't actually break the box until Mario goes through it. So Mario goes through the box here, and you can see it started to break, and we're just going to get out of the way of the cap. And the cap is going to head towards the mouth of the cave. And what this does is this allows us to collect the cap while already moving quickly, as opposed to during the ground pound. And this is very important because we need every last frame that we can get. So we're going to do a little bit of a run up, and we're going to collect this cap here. And we basically just use that to get all the way over here. Now, I messed up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and reload that state. Once we get part of the way over here, we're going to want to go into Mario Cam. And what this is going to do is a lot of what we need to do for the setup is actually getting all of... There are a few things that Mario needs to be normalized in order to properly do a setup. The first thing is your X position. The second thing is your Z position. The third thing is Mario's facing angle, and the fourth thing is the camera. So we are going to walk right up to this sign here, and we're going to start sidling. And exactly where doesn't matter too much. There's about 50 units of leeway. I like to get Mario's shadow lined up a little bit to the right of the shadow here, but like I said, fairly lenient. But the important thing is, we're going to go ahead and punch the sign, but Mario's facing angle isn't actually fixed yet because he's still facing a little bit to the left because of how we were coming in here. So we need to go neutral for just one frame, and this puts Mario in an idle T-pose kind of deal. He's facing the sign. The action is called standing against wall. But this is the animation that we want to be in. And from here, we're going to do a standing punch. So all we're going to do is we're just going to press B. What this is going to do, Mario's going to punch the sign. As soon as he makes contact with the sign, it's going to transition to moving punch. And since we're in Mario Cam, the camera is going to start to run, just like fly behind Mario. So Mario is going to take recoil back a little bit. We are going to hold the control stick to the right. It is very important you don't start holding the control stick until Mario's punch actually connects with the sign, because when he's doing the standing punch, you can cancel out of that by walking. That's called a punch cancel. We don't want to do that. So we collide with the sign, we start to take recoil, and now we're holding the control stick to the right. Camera recenters. and then Mario will move forward at the very end of the animation. That doesn't actually do anything. So now, at this point, Mario's facing angle and his Z position were set by sidling up to the sign and going idle. So his Z position is set to the sign itself, and Mario is facing exactly at the sign. So the next thing we want to do is we want to normalize his X position, and there's not too much to be able to do here. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this sidewall of the sign to do that. And how we're going to do that is we're going to turn 5 frames to the right at max turning speed, and we're going to turn 5 frames to the left at max turning speed. So this will keep Mario's facing angle normalized, but he's going to get pushed out by the sidewall of the sign. Now, counting out 5 frames is kind of tricky, namely because the entire thing, you're not starting from nothing, you're starting from an animation. So it is frame perfect. But how we're going to do this is we're going to watch Mario's fist, and right as his fist is about to touch his nose, that's when we want to that's when we're going to want to start turning left. So this entire time we've been holding right, so Mario's going to instantly start turning right. That much is easy. But as you can see, so here's 4 frames, and you can see his fist is starting to get raised up towards his nose. It's not quite there yet, so we'll go 1 more frame, and it's just barely not touching his nose. This is actually when we want to turn left, and the way you'll know if you overshot this is going to be, we'll see right here, if Mario's head turns down. So if his head tilts down a little bit, that means we've gone too far. So we get right here to this spot, and now we start turning left. So we start turning left, and same kind of deal. This time we're looking for Mario's fist to touch his hat. So he'll bring his fist up. See right here, it's not actually touching his hat. That's his, I guess that's the bottom of his hat. I always kind of think of those as his ear. But we're trying to touch this upper part. So we'll go 1 more frame after this. And you can see fist touching his hat. And you'll know you overshot this if he brings his arm down. So right here, that's the last frame that his fist is touching his hat, and he'll bring his arm down if you went too far. So we go to right here, and from here we are going to go neutral joystick. And right here you'll see Mario get pushed to the side. So right there, that little push to the side, that normalizes Mario's X coordinate. So now we have X, Z, and facing angle is normalized as well because we did 5 frames turning to the right and 5 frames turning to the left. So nothing has actually changed with this facing angle. Now the last thing that we do need to normalize is going to be Mario's camera, the camera itself. So not much in the way of anything that we can do here. You can go into first person. That takes a lot of time. However, since we're in Mario Cam, the camera is going to, again, snap back to Mario. It does take a little bit of time, so you don't want to go too soon. So as soon as Mario gets into the completely idle animation right here, he's going to start turning his head to the left and right, and you'll see that here. Turn left, turn right, blah, blah, blah. So we go back to the start of this, and what we're looking for is the moment we can see Mario's nose. So right there, you can that's kind of like his mustache. It's not really his nose. There's his nose right there. I like to take a couple extra frames here just to be extra sure, because there's that little bit of time. So now we can see Mario's nose. We know the camera's normalized. We know his X and Z position are normalized. We know his facing angle is normalized. So now what we're going to do is we're going to walk straight forward. And to get a little bit of extra time, we're actually going to dive into the water. Extra speed, extra time gives more leeway. And we have to dive at a very specific point. So right here, you see Mario's shadow turned angled. We're actually going to dive on the next frame, so we'll go one more frame forward, and we'll dive. And again, we're still holding forward the entire time. Now, unfortunately, because the B has to be, if you're pause buffering this, the B has to be on the first frame you unpause, there's not really a way of checking if you got this right or wrong. So once you get to the dive, you're going to go ahead and just commit. You're going to go all the way to the star, and if the textures don't make sense, then that's when you turn back and retry. So we're still walking straight forward until Mario starts to go down this ledge. This is where it starts to get really tricky, because this here has a lot of really nice intersections, lines, straight edges that we can use, but we have to start turning before that. So we don't get much in the way of things to check. What we're going to do is we're going to watch Mario's fist here, and what we're looking for, since we're still in Mario Cam, the camera's kind of low, what we're looking for is to see a little bit of space between Mario's fist and the sea floor here. So, right there, we can still see Mario's fist. Can't really see any daylight between there, so we'll go one more frame. And right there, we actually can see a little bit through here, right between Mario's fist and the sea floor. Now we know we've gone too far if we can see daylight on Mario's right hand as well. So we get to right here, we can just barely see daylight between here, but we can't see any daylight between here. So at this point, we're going to start turning right, and we just hold right, and now we can actually see Mario's shadow. Now we can use that to our advantage. So, I don't really have words for how to describe this, but this intersection right here, once Mario's shadow covers it, Mario's shadow covers the intersection, we want to start turning left. And as you can see, cap timer is already starting to expire, so you can see just how tight this is. But yeah, so you know you've gone too far if Mario's shadow is like heavily covering it. You just want the first frame that the shadow actually covers the intersection, and then we're going to start turning left. Now this gets us to what we talked about at the very start. You want the original way was to do a texture setup where you just center Mario's shadow on the center of this texture. But again, very precise. What this is going to do is we're going to walk right up to that texture. This is too early, but this is right on time. So you can see Mario's shadow kind of makes a crosshairs with the center of that texture. That's what we're looking for. You know, if Mario's shadow is covering the star's shadow, you've gone too far. So again, we're just looking for this right here. And the nice thing about Metal Mario walking underwater is just going neutral joystick actually stops him on a dime. And then we just let the star play out, metal cap fades out, and Mario collects the star. So again, really tricky to do. I'm probably not going to be able to do it first try in real time, but we'll see how this goes. So again, we walk off, and we ground pound through the box and get out of the way. We let the cap get a little bit towards the cave of the mouth, or mouth of the cave, excuse me. And we collect that, and just keep heading towards that way. Go into Mario Cam. I'm going to save a state here just for demonstration purposes. And we come right up to the sign, sidle on it, go neutral and punch, and start holding right. I'm going to save a state here. And again, we're looking for Mario's fist to touch his nose. Right there, start turning left. We're looking for Mario's fist to touch his hat. And let's see, it's very tricky to do one frame pause buffers. So again, fist touches nose. That's a little bit too far. That's a little bit too far. So right there, fist touches his hat. So now we go neutral. And now we're looking for Mario's nose. So right there we can see his nose. I'll save a state here. And we're just going to walk forward. So that, we've seen that was actually 2 frames. The shadow is not right on the edge. We're 1 frame down. So I'm going to save a state here as well. And we're going to dive the first frame we unpause. So we'll go unpause and dive immediately. That looked right to me, so we're going to keep going straight forward. I'm going to go ahead and save a state right here, again, just for demonstration purposes. Obviously, if you're doing this in a real run, you have to do it all in one go. So we walk down the slope here, and right here, we can't quite see daylight between here, so we'll try and go 1 more frame. Now we can see daylight, can't see daylight here, so we're going to start turning right. Shadow's not quite covering the crosshairs, so we're going to try and go 1 more frame. That was 2 frames, so that would have been a failed attempt. Very tricky, very important that you get them all on the right frame. It's the more you practice the 1 frame pause buffers, the easier these setups are going to be. So at this point, we can see the shadow is covering that. So we'll go ahead and save a state, again, for demonstration purposes. And we'll turn left, and now we want to line up right with the center crosshairs. Not quite there yet. That looks like that's 2 frames away, because we can see the shadow is just barely intersecting. There should be 1 more when the shadow barely covers, and then 1 more in the center, so we'll try and go 2 frames. And right there, shadow makes a crosshairs with the center of the texture. We unpause, and we just float up, collect the star. I hope this helps anyone that wants to try to get this star.